Guys, Kuzo here, back with another video, and in this video today we're going to be doing another installment of the collaborative series between Anime Uproar and I, where me and him come together to create some babies. Last installment of this series we took Meliodas and Elizabeth and created their son of Wrath. In this one we decided to stay within the same 7 deadly sins realm, and the character we're going to be designing today is the daughter of Merlin and Escanor. Also, just like the last collaboration, Anime Uproar will be uploading a video on his channel, taking a deeper dive into the character, maybe the psychology and powers of this character, related to Escanor and Merlin, and what this character really would be like. In the last installment of this series, Anime Uproar actually brought on Nux to talk about the character and go into a deeper dive with the character of the Son of Wrath. And I actually had no idea that was going to happen, so that was funny when I went to watch the video and heard Nux's voice. I was like, what the? And so that was a pleasant surprise. But yeah, thanks for joining in and making some babies with us, Nux. Thank you. We all come together and make some babies. I don't know whose baby it would be after 3 people join in, but yes. Bit of a gamble at this point. Nah, just mess around. Anyways, definitely make sure to go check out Anime Uproar's video. I have the link in the description for you guys. If you guys like this kind of content and want to see more, definitely make sure to hit that thumbs up button. And if you're new to my channel and like my artses, definitely make sure to subscribe and hit that bell icon to get notified when each video comes out. But with that being said, let's jump in and talk about this character design. So when I was first thinking about the design for this character, I wanted to make sure I put in some sort of fur poofs, because Escanor on one of his designs actually has some fur poofs on his shoulder/neck, and as well as Merlin. Merlin has a fur poof on her shoulders. So I was kind of trying to find some sort of similarity between them that I would be able to put on her to kind of make her feel more like the daughter of them, even though, not every son or daughter has to have something that they wear that looks like their mother or father. But in these cases, I definitely want to bring over those similarities. With her overall outfit, I wanted to make sure she had some sort of two-piece, so I gave her some shorts and a top, kind of like her mother, but I didn't want to make it as revealing as her mother's. And just like on Merlin's design, where she has thigh-high boots, which ironically I think is the most skin that's covered on her design, I wanted to incorporate something that's thigh-high on her, so I gave her some sort of stockings, and that's where I decided to also add some of the fur poofs on the top of those stockings. I think it's kind of weird that I call them fur poofs. It's just a really weird way to, describe something. But yes, the fur. As for her hair, I didn't want to make it too much like Merlin's, because Merlin's is long and kind of drapes down more. It doesn't have a whole lot of bounce to it. Of course, it does have some variation in the hair. It's not completely straight. Like I said, I didn't want to make it exactly like hers, so I ended up making her hair longer and kind of giving her some sort of bun in the back and some bangs that would slightly resemble Merlin's bangs. The inspiration from the hair is definitely more on Merlin's side than Escanor's side, because Escanor's hair, I just didn't know how to really, take any of those features and put it into her hair. Plus, she's the daughter, so I wanted to make sure she had a lot going on that resembled Merlin. Like I said in the last one, no, it doesn't mean the daughter has to resemble the mother and the son has to resemble the father, but in these cases I'm just kind of going with that flow. With the hair, one thing to note is I wanted to have it change when she went to something that resembled the one mode from Escanor. What I kind of came up with was I wanted the tips of her hair to start turning yellow as she went into the one mode, and maybe when she goes deeper into the one mode it completely changes to yellow, but when she goes back to normal it goes back to this purplish black. So that's something I kept in mind when I was going to do this illustration. I wanted the tips of her hair to turn yellow, but not have her hair be completely yellow in this illustration. And as for the powers that are displayed here, maybe she has more than this, I don't know. I don't know as much about Merlin, and I actually don't know the backstories of Merlin and Escanor that much because I haven't read into the manga, and the anime hasn't really shown the backstories of them as much. It may have shown some clippets here and there, but nothing in depth like the manga has gone into. But for the power that I wanted to be displayed and shown in this illustration, I chose something closer to Escanor. So I based a lot of the pose around how Escanor holds up a sun on the top of his finger, and I wanted her to have 2 suns and be holding those up on top of her fingers, and then have a bunch of little suns around her. We can just call them balls of fire, whichever strikes your fancy. I was just trying to avoid calling them a bunch of balls, okay guys? But anyway, so another thing I wanted to incorporate in the design that I knew I wanted to incorporate when I was first thinking about was some sort of lion crest. So I took some lion crests and put them as kind of like a holder up near the fur on her shoulders. I thought it would be something fun to do that kind of connects her to Escanor a little bit more, because most of her design is definitely heavily inspired by Merlin for the most part. Another thing that really goes into thinking about a character and their character design and how you kind of display them, what they wear, and kind of how they feel is definitely their personality. Obviously, it definitely goes into a character design a lot, and it can affect a character design a lot. So one of the things I imagined was she was definitely a rebellious kind of teenager. And I wanted that pride side of her to definitely be more so on the surface than kind of just within a form like how it is with Escanor. So she's definitely a more rebellious teenager. And one thing I thought would be really funny is basically with her being a rebellious teenager, she kind of takes advantage of the fact that, you know, Escanor is really weak at night and, you know, disobeys him a lot. And there's really nothing he can do about it because he's so weak at night. But, you know, during the day, she definitely gets punished for, you know, her actions she pulls at night and taking advantage of how weak he is. Just thought that would be a really funny situation to actually happen if she was a real character in the anime. So another thing I thought about with her form was, you know, would she get super muscular? And, you know, I thought about trying to do that and trying to pull it off, kind of like how the chick Brawly, she pulled it off. But I ended up not going with that here. Maybe she has an even higher form that makes her get all buff. I don't know. But yeah, so about the colors, I wanted to make sure that she at least had some green on her because green is a big Escanor color. And then I wanted her to have some sort of dark purplish blue, which I kind of did with her stockings and then also her shorts. So that's just kind of the thought process behind the colors and why I chose those colors. So now to talk a little bit about the art of the illustration. So with the pose and everything, I knew that this illustration was going to be turned into a t-shirt. Like for the last illustration, that was actually a solo illustration that I did completely separate from the t-shirt that Anime Uproar wanted to sell on his store. So basically I made a t-shirt for the Son of Wrath and then I made a completely separate illustration. Basically for this one, the illustration is going to be very similar to what you would get on the t-shirt. So the pose of her and the suns and everything is going to be something that is pulled over to the t-shirt as well. So that's something heavily I needed to keep in mind when actually designing this illustration. I had to make sure when drawing and designing the composition on this, would this fit well on a t-shirt? That's one of the biggest reasons why the top 2/3 of this illustration is where the heaviest part of the composition is going on with the suns and all that stuff. That's why all the action's happening up there. And basically the composition is pointing all towards looking up towards her face. I knew the bottom part would be primarily focused on the lettering that we're going to be putting down there. So I pretty much just used the mountains as a composition tool to have you look more towards the top part, which is going to be the most bright part where her head is and with the yellow and then all the suns and stuff like that. One of the things that I want to make sure to do is bring the yellows down to where the blues are and bring some of the bluish purples up to where the yellows are. And that's kind of what I try to do with the clouds. The clouds are kind of like a bluish purple, and then I use the yellows that would technically be from the sky being kind of like an energy coming up from her that would be stretching down into the mountain area. I mean, it's not technically in the mountain area, but it's going over the mountains. As you can tell, the yellow really pops when it's going over those bluish purple mountains because they're such different colors from each other and it looks kind of cool. Basically, where there's a lot of blue, I wanted to have a little yellow, and when there's a lot of yellow, I wanted to have a little bit of bluish purples. And the whole goal in doing that was to try to create a little bit more balance amongst the image, so it wasn't just straight yellows on top and straight blues on the bottom. So bring some of those yellows down to where there's a lot of blues really gives a little bit of balance when you also bring a little bit of purples up towards where yellow is. That was kind of the whole thought process on the background, and then I took the clouds and kind of had them swirling up like I do in a lot of my illustrations, and I realized that I need to kind of get away from that and try out some new things because I actually do that a lot, but Yeah, definitely going to try something new in some of my other ones. And also, one other thing, you might notice that the whole top 1/3 is the brightest portion of the illustration, and basically the bottom 2/3 of the illustration is a lot darker. One thing that this does is allows me to make the character a lot more bright and make her the big center of focus, because she definitely pops out from that background. And it also gives me a chance with that bright energy going around her to make her pop out even more from that background. The thing about these mountains, they're definitely very challenging. I never really drew mountains this close up before with this much, grain to them, and they have a lot of texture. And also with the colors that I chose, because I chose blues shining up from the bottom, and I needed to show some sort of red and yellow light that's coming from the sky and bouncing down onto the top of the mountains. So there's this whole kind of color variation from the very top of the mountains all the way down to the bottom, from like this purplish yellow all the way down to a straight, like very, baby bluish color shining up from the bottom. But yeah, all in all, the mountains were very difficult, and it was a learning experience, and I hope next time I do mountains I can try to do them even better. Now I just want to take a second to talk a little bit about the green on her top shirt, and let me tell you, green is just for some reason one of the hardest colors for me to paint, and I just don't know why. Every time I paint them, they always feel really fake at first, and I eventually rework it to a point that I'm pretty satisfied with it, but man, I always have the hardest time coloring greens. I'm not a big fan of you, green. I'm not a big fan. So one of the things you might have noticed throughout the whole illustration was me coloring the background, then going to coloring her, and then coloring the background a little bit, and I kind of did everything a little bit one at a time. And one reason why I do that is because you want to make sure the whole illustration is coming together all at once. You don't want to completely paint a background or completely paint a person before you completely paint one or the other, because you may not know exactly how each thing affects each other. Although I would say if you completely painted a background and then painted the character, I feel like that would still be okay, because the background is really what affects the character most. The character doesn't really affect the background that much. Of course, there are some exceptions to this rule. If they're complete and pure light themselves, they could be lighting up the whole background. But in general, the character doesn't necessarily change the background. But there is a certain point in each illustration that I do where if I have the character down and colored just enough, and I have the background colored just enough, typically what I'll do is I'll go ahead and finish almost the whole background before I finish the character, because that's kind of like the hardest part and the most detailed part. So I want to get that out of the way before I go and kind of have more fun with the character. And that's essentially what I did there. I kind of fixed up the rest of the background and pretty much what it's going to stay. There might be a few details here and there that I'll, pluck in. But for the most part, I know that if I left the background alone, that would be just fine as is. But I wanted to focus the rest of my energy on the character at this point. If I would have to choose one thing that was the hardest thing out of this whole illustration, I would have to say those mountains. Those mountains were definitely the hardest thing. And then second to that was coloring that green shirt. That was the second hardest thing in this illustration. And then the third hardest thing I would have to say are the clouds, because I kept on getting confused on what color I wanted to have the clouds be, how dark I wanted them to be, exactly the ratio of dark and light of the clouds I wanted to have. And I ended up coming to a nice balance I liked, and I ended up making a big portion of the top part of the clouds a lot lighter than they were. I was really happy that I ended up making that decision to change the clouds, because I wasn't actually going to, but when I did, I noticed it really helped, emphasize that whole top 1/3 a lot more with their, focusing in on the face than it did before. At this point in the illustration, I'm pretty much close to being done. I'm just putting in those extra details and finishing up the things I haven't finished up yet, like the little designs and little details. And the last thing I end up having to do is the energy that's around her. And I typically leave that to being one of the last things, because I want it to be an extra pop on top of everything. I don't want necessarily the energy to be the defining feature or feel like the energy has to be the thing that makes the whole illustration cool. I want to make it look good before I put in the energy. I want it to be just an extra oomph on top of the whole illustration. But in any case, definitely make sure to go check out Anime Uproars' video for this. Link for that will be in the description. Go over there and show him some love. But yeah, I always have a lot of fun doing these if they had a baby series. Something that's really cool and definitely can be brought over to other series, but then again, who knows? You know, Seven Deadly Sins is kind of one of those things where you kind of know what's going to be, you know, who's going to be together, but I could see us kind of upsetting some people in other series, you know, being like, no, that's not the ship I wanted. Well, yeah, if you guys want to help support my artists, help support what I do on this channel, you guys can check me on my Patreon, link in the description. But I would like to take this time to thank my current patrons. 19 Black Dragon 89, Aaliyah Williams, Aaron McQuiston, Alpha Dog Studios, Anya, Benjamin Thoma, Connor, Daniel Hilliard, Daniel Hutchinson, Dope Closet, Grimoff, Ian Dobb, Joe, Johnny Boy Draws, Josh Aguilera, JT, Kyla Smith, Leo McIntyre, Licor, Marek Karaz, Maracuzio, Monso, Nate Lee, Noah Henderson, Prathana, Ryan, Satoshi, Slow Days, Safine, Spencer Davis, Arjun, Wear My Crown, Wes Fletcher, William, and Woody Olis. The best pencil shinobi's there are and help me be able to do what I do on this channel. But if you guys like this video, please hit that thumbs up button, and if you're new to this channel, like what you see, please subscribe, hit the bell icon to get notified when each video comes out. And like always guys, I hope you're having a great day, and I'll see you guys in the next video.